So I've been filming for about 10 years now. And in these past 10 years, I have learned so much more about filmmaking than when I first started. And there's been a lot of things that have changed over time, such as my opinions on what is correct filmmaking and what isn't. But one of the biggest things in filmmaking is that you need to understand movement. In filmmaking, movement adds energy to a scene. Now you can get static shots where you can really intensify a situation and basically showcase a mood, but when deemed appropriate, movement helps showcase a scene overall. Up until about 2019, I used to film my videos completely handheld. I did not have any stabilization. I would just have jagged shots, and pretty much I would always shoot all my videos in 60 frames per second. Yeah. But from that whole entire process, what I learned was that there were many different strategies that I had to take in order to really get stable shots. After I found out what a stabilizer and what a gimbal was, I was hooked. I was completely addicted to the idea that if you have a gimbal, all your shots are going to be completely cinematic. You're never going to have to go back to going to handheld shots. And from there on out, any type of work that you put out that had smooth shots would be deemed as professional. And in my opinion, and where I sit 6 years later, I don't necessarily think that's completely true. See, I love gimbals, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I find it being a hassle to completely rig out and set up and just get shots compared to going straight into handheld motion. Before, I used to argue the fact that gimbal shots are the only way to go. If you have a gimbal, you're gonna get smooth cinematic shots, your videos are gonna look way, way better, and necessarily in some situations that's still true. But again, I think it also depends on the complete project that you're working on. Handheld shots give me this authentic, real vibe. There's something about handheld shots that when I go out and I capture, I just feel much more immersed in the video than if it is completely stable. For example, last year when I got together with a friend, we went and shot a Gap Spec ad commercial. Now, initially, I was going to bring my gimbal along and capture all this footage of us walking into the store and him buying the clothes and doing some smooth dollying shots. But I didn't really feel like that was the vibe that I wanted to portray. So of course, I took my camera and I went completely handheld with it. Now you can obviously still get stable shots when you rig out your camera, such as on my Sony a7 IV, I have my top handle, I have the cage, and I have it to the point where I can balance it enough where when I do use my hand, I can kind of use my body as that counterweight to be able to shift. And plus there's also steady shot into the camera. So if I really want to get super smooth shots, I'm able to utilize that as well. When I was shooting that Gap commercial, I was able to move around more freely. I didn't really have to stress too much on having a perfect look compared to when I shoot with a gimbal. Now, the first gimbal I ever used was in 2019. It was a Zhun Crane 2. I actually used it for real estate, and I thought it was absolutely game changer. I had my Lumix G7 on that bad boy, and I was getting smooth shots all the way out. Now, the thing about gimbals is they are very immersive as well. You can use it to track action. You can use it to showcase and reveal an item. Gimbals are very, very helpful. When it comes to being able to go run and gun style, I very much prefer the handheld look. A couple months ago, I actually got to DP my first ever TV commercial shoot, and some of the shots that I used in that whole entire video were actually shot with a gimbal. It was a really good time. It was super, super smooth. But the interesting thing is sometimes you don't necessarily need a gimbal to achieve that perfect look. I also come from a background where I absolutely love documentaries, so I may seem a little bit biased talking about it. Now, sometimes movement can be a little too shaky, so you don't have to overdo it, but there are a lot of different things that you can do, whether it's in post or in body camera stabilization, that you can use to actually enhance the image while going handheld. Overall, there are pros and cons to both sides. For some of the pros for handheld, it adds realism and intensity. It's quick to set up and adjust. It's great for tight spaces and fast-paced shooting. Some of the cons is that it can feel a little unpolished if it is done excessively, and it requires just a little bit of extra skill to prevent extreme shakiness. For gimbals, some of the pros include smooth, professional-looking motions, versatile for dynamic scenes, and enhances your production value. Now, on the contrary, when it comes to cons, it might feel like a heavier setup and time-consuming, and it can also feel overly polished or lose that organic vibe. There's no right or wrong answer, in my opinion, when it comes to shooting, and everybody's shooting style is completely different. For me, in 2024, I spent a lot more time being handheld than I was actually on an actual gimbal, and the same thing with being on a tripod. It was a lot easier for me to get more sweeping motions and pans and tilts than being on a gimbal. And at the same time, stylistically, when it came down to shooting commercial vibes, I had to go to the gimbal. I wanted some smooth action shots. When it came to shooting weddings, I wanted to stay on the gimbal to get that smooth, buttery B-roll. So in conclusion, handheld and gimbal shots are incredible tools to use. Each comes with its own unique vibe and purpose. The key is knowing when to go raw or to use polished movements to help serve your vision. If you want, I would love to hear your comments about this. What is your favorite? Would you prefer handheld or do you guys prefer gimbal shots? It's been your boy Gabe. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like, share the video. Thank you guys again for watching. More content coming out like this year, and I will see you guys in the next one. That's a lot of hand movement. All right, take it easy.